Chris Graham and Ray Petree. We're going to talk some AEW wrestling. Ray reviews Dynamite's the pay-per-views, previews, and reviews pay-per-views for us here at AFP. Has been doing a good job of that for the last few months. So let's start there. Let's review this week's Dynamite, Ray, as we're heading into Grand Slam next week, a banger of a show it looks like coming up next week in New York. How do you think overall this week's show did in terms of getting us ready for next week?
I don't think it really prepared us for next week. They've done the bulk of that in the last, well, I guess last week.
Yeah.
This show was the matches were good, the segments were hit or miss. I think it was, you could have skipped this episode and still got the gist of what's going to happen next week. Um, the Jericho and Orange Cassidy. I don't really know what we're doing here. I don't understand the point. I don't understand how this benefits either wrestler or either faction, the conglomeration or the learning tree. Um, what did you think about that match? It was 20 minutes.
I had the same opinion. Having read your column, I had this a same or similar opinion as you did when they first came out. Why are we starting the show with this match? These guys can be ratings killers. I know Orange Cassidy's been a favorite of Tony Khan's for a few years, and Chris Jericho used to be the demo god. I've got the numbers from WrestleNomics pulled up here. Uh, the Jericho Cassidy match started the show, the first quarter hour averaged 782,000. Uh, the next they did continue into the second quarter hour, as you mentioned, for a few minutes. The second quarter hour went to 724, the third went to 682, so we quickly lost audience. We've seen this so many times. They're referencing a feud from 3+ years ago, back during the pandemic when we were, the orange juice and the jacket and all that silly stuff. Um, that feud played out while we did not have fans largely in arenas, and so I guess you couldn't get a gauge for how fans reacted to it. I don't think they're reacting to it now. So yes, and then starting a show with this, I watch Dynamite's most weeks with a good friend who's a big wrestling fan, and our comment was they could have done this match on Rampage, and no one would have bothered to care either way.
The crowd seemed to enjoy Jericho, which I mean, just only added to the defeating the purpose here. You have the heels getting cheered more than the babyface. It was odd. It was perplexing. And like you said, obviously they lost a lot of viewers going into that third quarter hour, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, but I wonder if you compare shows that open with segments like an MJF segment or, whoever it may be, compared to a match with Orange Cassidy. I wonder what the drop off looks like.
Yeah, and I need to let's see the trying to get a sense. The one thing that WrestleNomics does a good job of generally, the last 80 days trend, um, it looks like it starts a little higher. He doesn't have numbers here. Brandon Thurston doesn't have the exact numbers here, but the show. This is a problem for the show in general. Is that uh, over the 2 hours, the viewers are lost. And I do track this with just look. I don't watch a lot of WWE content, but I do track the numbers. Over a 3 hour Raw, which now they're going to 2 hours for the next few months before the move to Netflix, and then we'll see what happens with Netflix. The third hour of Raw is a big ratings killer because it's just hard to stay for 3 hours every Monday night. But for the first 2 hours, they stay pretty consistent. SmackDown certainly stays pretty consistent for its 2 hours, but Dynamite always loses. A lot of viewers. This one went from 782 for the first quarter hour to 637 for the final quarter hour, and even lower for the overrun, 627. Um, that's a reflection of fans, I think, wanting to tune in. We want to see in the first 15 minutes, we want to see who's going to be there. AEW had been starting a lot of shows off lately with a rundown. Here's what you can look forward to on the show. This week we just got a match, and we didn't get a feel for what the rest of the show is going to be. But we'll tune in for that first quarter hour. We might stick around for other stuff as it comes up. I don't think this show, starting with a match, gave us the opportunity to say, "Hey, we need to be here for this whole show." In fact, I have two TVs playing, and I had a baseball game on one and this on the other, and I was paying more attention to the baseball game as this show went on.
I grew up in the era of Raw where you open with a cold open
Yeah.
and you set up the main event later that night, and you get to establish what's going on in the episode. And maybe I've been too overly informed by that, but I think that's a good formula. But that then again, maybe if it were a different match, people would have stayed tuned in. I don't know. It's really tough to say. I don't do as good of a job at tracking the quarter hours as I should. But uh, yeah, this was not. I don't think this was a great way to open the show. So
I think, yeah, I mean, and as we wrap this part of it up, start a show with give us a hint of the stars that are going to be on the show would be a way to do it. You can do a match if you want to a couple minutes in, but later in the show we're going to have Swerve Strickland. We're going to hear from MJF, etc. Brian Danielson is going to address whatever he's going to address. Um, AEW is great with matches, not so great with stories at all. And the layout of the show 5 years in, we're almost exactly 5 years in, is still a question. So that's a bit frustrating, to say the least. Looking at some of the hits that you mentioned in your column, uh, let's where do I want to start? John Moxley, I had not been a fan of for his a lot of his AEW run.
yeah,
I like what I'm seeing here with this turn with him and Claudio Castagnoli against Brian Danielson. And man, you talk about rehabilitating someone's career. Marina Shafir is man, she is. I don't know what they've done to her except for just. I mean, she was off TV for a while and now she's back and she's a badass. It's just
yeah.
they've transformed her and that click is believable.
I know John Moxley's talked a lot behind the scenes about mentoring Marina Shafir and trying to translate some of that MMA into wrestling and how you can make it look more legitimate, that how that fusion can blend a little bit better. And I think it's worked. I mean, she looks great. She looks tough as hell. She's choking out guys, security guards. And I've been going back and trying just for fun, been going back and watching more Terry Funk, old Terry Funk, because by the time I was watching wrestling, he was on like his seventh comeback and doing pretty off the wall stuff. But John Moxley's bringing that kind of, you don't know what he might do, you don't know how violent he will be, and taking a hammer and breaking Isaiah Cassidy's hand quite convincingly, might I add. It looked pretty good. Um, how far are we going to stretch the limits of television here? Pay per view is a paper bag on Danielson's face. I Darby Allin versus Moxley next week. I am very excited to see how far these guys take this because they're two crazy guys.
I like too. Private Party. I was commenting this during the show this week. The promo they did. They came out cross with a harder edge. They've been for 5 years. They got a very early big win over the Young Bucks. You think,
Yep.
hey man, they're gonna put the Bucks are putting them over. They're gonna push these guys, and then nothing follow up, which is too often the case with those kind of things with AEW, unfortunately. But they were presented as these party guys and all this kind of stuff. I liked hearing that New York swagger out of those guys. It made me even think, there's this talk about the Hurt Business, whatever that I think Hurt Syndicate, maybe they're going to be called. Um, MVP, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin eventually coming in, and what a debut that would be if they were to come in next week in New York. But whenever the case may be, I would like to see these hard-edged private party guys who now sound like they are New York badass guys. At least they, for one promo anyway, they could be the tag team in a Hurt Syndicate, and almost like a sort of African American Four Horsemen kind of group. You'd have Lashley as your champion level guy, Shelton Benjamin as your shooter,
Yeah.
um, MVP is the mouthpiece, the JJ Dillon, and then your tag team private party. Um, but I'm dream booking there. To go back to private party, loved what I saw. The glimpse we got to see there of a team that could be taken seriously again.
I love the comment Moxley made about 5 years ago. You guys seem like you're the tag team of the future, and nothing's happened. I think sometimes it's good to just be direct and sort of, as we would say, meta about things. Because, like you said, these guys got that huge win over the Young Bucks, and then they have just. I know Mark Quinn was injured for a long time, but these guys have just been stagnant. And John Moxley called it a crucible, I think, for him to overcome. I think these guys can come back with a harder edge. This gives them an opportunity to take that promo and really come back and rebrand themselves. And I totally agree with you. I think MVP, Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and those two could make a fantastic faction for AEW.
I even see. I was peeking ahead to the Friday night Rampage lineup, and Leo Rush being on that in a four-way match. I'm a big Leo Rush fan. I don't think he's being used well at all in AEW. He's because he's two things. He's a really fun performer to watch in the ring. He's a small guy, like five,
Yeah,
660 pounds, but he's really good in the ring. He's even better on the mic, and they're not giving him the mic at all.
yeah,
And so, I mean, maybe another addition to a heel faction there, because he was with Lashley, of course, in WWE as his
yeah.
mouthpiece. That I could see that coming as well, and being of value to AEW. We got a Ricochet Beast Mortos match, and the Beast Mortos is a guy that I don't know that he's not going to ever main event top mid card. He's going to be middle mid card, lower mid card at best, but he can work. Um,
Yeah.
and man, that was a fun match with Ricochet. They really worked well together and put on a good show.
The Beast Mortos has become a highlight of every show he's a part of, mostly Collision, because that's where he usually wrestles. But this was a fantastic match, and it almost felt like the Beast Mortos at times was outshining Ricochet, which is a feat in of itself. Um, God, I'd love to see him in a tag team with a guy who could talk, or I'd love. I mean, yeah, he would be phenomenal in the tag team. But this was a great match, a great statement win for Ricochet. And you know, it's too bad he won't be on the Grand Slam card, but I'm excited to see him and Osprey at that fifth anniversary show. I don't know if that'll be the main event, but it'll definitely be a phenomenal match.
Yeah, if it's not the main event, it's the one you want to see either
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
The women division, it tends to go back and forth. We have almost like we have two divisions with the world champion part of the division and then the TBS champion division. We got the world champion division this week with the tag match with the champ Mariah May and Serena Deeb makeshift tag team match against Yuka Sakazaki and Queen Aminata. They're building for these four. Mariah May needs to move on. Tony Storm needs a break. Uh, and so Mariah May is now we're going to get um, a replay of well, not replay. I guess the second part of her back and forth with Mira. Why am I forgetting her last name? Help me out.
Shirakawa.
Shirakawa, thank you. Too many Japanese names for me to
Yeah,
keep up with here, but we're going to see that coming up pretty soon. And Serena Deeb is somebody who wrestled for the world title a few months ago. Um, doesn't seem destined to hold a belt, but she's so good in the ring that she makes everybody look good when she works with them.
yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that he had to shoehorn all of the women's wrestling into one 15-minute match. Maybe that's generous. But Serena Deeb looked great. I'm excited to see her work with Aminato on Collision and continue that feud. Serena Deeb has really become the benchmark for young women's wrestlers. If you can handle that feud and you can move on beyond Deeb, I think you have a bright future in the division. And Mariah May and Yuka Sakazaki, this is a fun little feud, but like you said, I think this is really just a prelude to the Mina Shirakawa feud that's I think eventually going to happen. It's interesting. Mariah May got virtually no reaction from the crowd when she came out. Um, Yuka Sakazaki's was surprisingly positive. I mean, her music is good. She's a pretty good wrestler, but she hasn't. I looked this up, I guess, for the review. She hasn't wrestled in Dynamite since 2021. So it's amazing she got the reaction she did. But AEW fans are smart, as they say, I guess. So, but it was a good match, and I'm glad that we got sort of two feuds continuing in one match. This was, I think, smart booking.
Another two feuds in one. The main event was a six-person trios match. He's called them six-man matches. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita versus Kazuchika Okada and the Bucks. Basically, showcases for Takeshita versus Okada and the Bucks versus Ospreay and Fletcher. I gotta say, I'm disappointed that we have Ospreay and Fletcher as a makeshift tag team getting a tag team title shot. They're both, I mean, fine, great wrestlers, obviously, but Ospreay should be in the singles picture and that exclusively. I know Fletcher's floating around waiting for his Aussie Open tag team partner to get back. Though perhaps, he's had so much time as a singles the last 6+ months that I don't know if he'll need to go back to tag wrestling when that's all over.
Right.
The Bucks haven't defended the belts very much in the 6 months they've had the belts, and here we go again. I don't. When they rest when those two tag teams get together, I don't want to see the Bucks lose to a makeshift tag team because then you got two belts on Osprey, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
Um, so why are we doing this? I don't know. Now I'm looking forward to Takeshita versus Okada. That
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a
that's
money.
going to be a great match. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So last week we spoke privately about how neither of us were a fan of a makeshift tag team getting another shot at the tag team championships. At All Out, it was Claudio and Wheeler Yuta, who yeah they've tagged together, but they're not a tag team. And AEW has a lot of tag teams, a lot of great tag teams. Now I thought about this more, and I don't know if you heard Wednesday, Kota Ibushi posted that he and Omega are training again, and they expect to make a return soon. I think, and this has kind of been the feud since they won the titles, or since they broke away from Omega, was the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks, and I think that's the end game here. I think the Bucks will ultimately drop that title to them. Um, so maybe it's good that a makeshift tag team is losing to the Bucks because it doesn't bury another actual tag team. Um, which I don't think FTR or the Acclaimed exited that feud at All In looking better than they entered it, and they already didn't look good, either of them, because I think a lot of people are just so fatigued with those three teams. But maybe it's good that Fletcher and Osprey will take that loss, and you know, but I'm tired of the Young Bucks being champions. I I understand the Young Bucks and the Golden Lovers is to them that seems like a big feud, but I would have preferred someone else leave All In with the titles. But um, it is what it is. This was in terms of the match, the main event, it was good, but I don't think it didn't exceed my expectations. All six of these guys are great wrestlers. You sort of expect that benchmark of excellence from them. So
I do remember a Golden Lovers Young Bucks match from New Japan that aired on one of their U.S. shows way 5-6 years ago.
yeah,
Back when they were still on Access TV.
yeah,
And it went. I mean, it was one of the better tag team matches I've seen, but it was 5 or 6 years ago. When it had to be more, at least maybe 6 years ago. Now you think about it, because AEW's been around for 5 years. Great match, but everybody was healthy then. They were all, they were 5 years, 5 or 6 years less of bumps then.
yeah,
Um, and it was good to see that you mentioned the photo online posted by Ibushi of him training with Omega. I don't know who I was more excited to see. I mean, Omega looked pretty good for a guy who's been in a hospital bed a lot the last several months. He looked like he was in pretty good shape. Ibushi still had a shirt on in the picture, which made me fear that
yeah.
maybe he's not in as good a shape as he needs to be. When he came to AEW, he did not look the same as he looked in his heyday, which wasn't that long ago in New
No,
Japan. So, but yeah, if they're anywhere near their condition, their peak condition, yeah. I mean, and I don't know how quickly that could be, because I'm with you. We need to get those belts off of the Bucks. We need to put them on somebody who will defend them and be a presence every week.
yeah.
So um let's let's switch gears a little bit and talk. about a couple of roster possibilities. Well, one seems like it's not even a possibility. Miro, who has not wrestled in 2024 for AEW, not on any of the shows, TV shows or pay-per-views, reports today as we're recording this that he has asked for his release. Not a surprise, I guess. Not to me. I'm sure not to you either. I'm the only thing I'm surprised about is it took this long.
He hasn't wrestled since World's End when he had that very awkward feud with Andrade, when his ex-wife now was involved in. You know, he was TNT champion for 140 days, and it seemed like a lot longer because that reign was such a defining reign for that title. And happened at a time where AEW was really hitting its stride in late 2021. It's unfortunate that I think he's wrestled a dozen times since 2022. And he filmed I think a TV show or a movie, and then he was injured, and then sounded like there were maybe creative differences, and then he got injured again, and it hasn't been a great ride for Miro. I I hope that a new environment helps him, because I don't think AEW is positive for him anymore. I don't think this is benefiting his career. Um, but it's unfortunate because he's a great wrestler and looks good on AEW television.
Yeah, he's a guy. I remember being at a live WWE Raw at the height of his and Lana, yeah, as her ring name was, when they were still the pro Putin heels in WWE, and at the old Richmond Coliseum, which doesn't even exist anymore, which is just weird for me to even think about. Um, and being in the live crowd, you could not hear a word they were saying when they were in the ring because they had that much heat. Um, and so for a few months there, I mean, everybody strives to have either that much heat or that kind of noise and positivity, and they had it in a flash in a pan. But except for that, and then the little bit of time with Rusev Day, um, it's his career has not turned out the way a lot of us would have thought when we were hearing the loud, lusty boos
Yeah.
during their pro Putin days. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if a change of scenery, and I've been anticipating this for him for a couple of years, really. I don't know if a change of scenery. I don't know if he goes to WWE. You look at Andrade. Andrade thought that the grass was greener on the other side, and it's probably not. It's not appearing to be for him in WWE when he returned there either. Aside from Mira going back and maybe making a splash, perhaps as a quote unquote surprise entrant in a Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
He'll get a pop then. I don't know if he gets much more than a pop for something like that, unfortunately for him. And I agree. It has nothing to do with his in-ring ability, or I love that dark character he was playing in AEW, feuding with his god, and he gave some really good promos in that time. We just never got to see it in the ring quite as much with him.
WWE is so top heavy. They have such a strong roster at the top. And you look across the board at all their champions right now. I mean, they're some of the best wrestlers in the world. Gunter, Cody Rhodes, LA Knight, Braun Breaker, Liv Morgan, Nia Jax. Anyways, you know, it's hard to break through that upper echelon, that upper crust. And then you're not talking about guys like Roman Reigns, Rey Mysterio, go down the line. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. So if you go to WWE as a singles wrestler, are you going to make a splash? Probably not. Could he go to Impact, MLW? Could he go to NXT? Could he go to New Japan? Maybe. Is he healthy even? I mean, that's another thing. He's supposedly been recovering from multiple injuries. And I don't know if that's just because of inaccurate reporting or really because he's that banged up. But can he even wrestle immediately if he goes somewhere else? A lot of these are questions that the news is so fresh, we don't really know yet. But like you said, that we've expected this. I mean, he just hasn't been on TV enough. And Fightful reported earlier this year he wanted to work with Moxley and they denied it. I mean, how many other things has he pitched and it just hasn't worked out? I mean, It's tough to say. Only he knows that, and Tony Khan, I guess.
You mentioned one name that I wanted to talk about, and then this will probably help us wrap up the podcast here. Kevin Owens is being his name is floating out there as someone who could be a target for Tony Khan. Owens' contract is expected to be coming up around the first of the year in 2025. He had signed an extension on his deal in 2020, going into 2022. And there was a lot of speculation before he signed that extension with WWE then that he would be a target for AEW because of his history with guys like Matt and Nick Jackson and Kenny Omega, their time together in Ring of Honor. Um, and also coincidentally, perhaps not, Sami Zayn's contract looks like it will be coming up around the same time. It would be natural if one would jump that the other might jump, given that they've been such close friends throughout their career. I'll throw this to you first. If Kevin Owens were available to AEW, do you think he could be a big time player in AEW if he were to make the jump?
I remember when the last time his contract was up. So I guess this is early 2021 or maybe late 2021. He, the rumor was he was seriously considering going to AEW, and then WWE offered him for at the time and for WWE an outrageous sum of money. I mean, he was not many guys were seven-figure guys, and he became one of them. And he went on to main event WrestleMania with Steve Austin, and then he main evented it with Sami Zayn in a tag team match against the Usos. For Kevin Owens at this point in his career in WWE, given I don't know how much WWE you watch or how generally aware you are of what's going on, but is he ever going to main event WrestleMania again? Is he ever going to win a world championship again? So for him, it really depends on what AEW can offer him in terms of opportunity. And certainly, I think as recent reports around Swerve Strickland would you know wager us to bet, probably a lot of money, an extraordinary sum of money for him. You spoke about Ring of Honor, his relationship with those guys. But just think about for him, you go to AEW, now your entire back catalog from Ring of Honor and PWG is available to sort of to build this profile for him that he is this multi-time world champion, a legendary wrestler in his own right. I think you're sort of weighing the crowds, the attendance, the ratings in relation to what you can accomplish as a singles wrestler versus what you have left in the WWE. And I think the opportunity is probably greater in AEW, but at this point in his career, is he comfortable leaving and starting over somewhere fresh? That's but if throwing out numbers, let's say Swerve Strickland makes $4 million a year. I think Kevin Owens warrants that, and that's pretty hard to pass up in this business. So I don't know, but
And a better travel schedule. And I agree with you. If you're assessing his career in WWE, he's probably done what he can do there. And maybe that's why a guy like Adam Copeland, who's several years older than Kevin Owens, decided to make the jump from WWE to AEW. I've done what I can do here. Let's see what else I can do somewhere else. Um, Owens would go from being probably a mid card guy who is a guy that you have to beat to get to the next level in WWE to being a guy who is one of the guys in AEW. If I were Owens, though, I would want to talk a lot ahead of time, not just about money. I would want to kind of get a feel for a plan for using me, and I say that in the context of I was so excited about Kazuchika Okada coming to AEW from New Japan, and I've been very disappointed with the rollout of him. Um, for the smart fans who watched New Japan before and know Okada's greatness, we don't need to be sold on that. But for American fans who've only heard of Okada, never watched him there, you would look at this guy and say, why is this guy that we've seen the last 6 months? Why was he reputed to be the best wrestler in the world? Because we've not seen that out of him. Um, and we don't see him even he's being presented in his promos as a comedy guy, which he's not. He shouldn't be presented that way. So if I were Owens, I would maybe either come up with my own ideas and pitch them to Tony, and then have Tony commit to me.
Yeah.
He would use me that way because Kevin Owens can be with a fresh start. He could be a guy that you build around, no doubt. He's so good on the mic, and he's so versatile in the ring, can wrestle so many styles, and that when you think about the great world champions of the 70s and 80s, it's the adaptability to be able to wrestle so many different guys that makes you a main event guy because you can look good with anybody. And
Yeah.
he's a guy like that. So yeah, I definitely foresee that AEW would have interest. I would think he would have interest in AEW. Um, and I don't know if WWE throws a ton of money at him again to get him to keep him away. They might say we've kind of got the best out of you that we can get.
Yeah, I think he's maximized his potential. He's been a world champion in WWE. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that's a safe assumption to make. He's main evented 2 WrestleManias. I mean, he's got to be over 40 years old or around 40. So there's only so much room for upward mobility. Whereas in AEW, you can be world champion. You could form a dynamic faction with the Young Bucks. You could be a tag team champion with Adam Cole or Sami Zayn if he jumps ship. There's a lot of possibility there. But like you said, it all comes down to when he meets with Tony Khan, what he can lock in terms of what he's being promised and what can be realistically achievable. If it's a world championship and it's main eventing pay per views and it's kill Sting kill shirts and you're selling 1 million of them, okay, yeah, I understand that. Then that all sounds like a money making opportunity. But I think what it really is going to come down to is how much AEW is willing to offer, and I would assume it's going to be in the vicinity of Mercedes Moné and Kazuchika Okada and Swerve Strickland and MJF. It's going to be that kind of money, because, like you said, he can work with anyone. He's a fantastic talker. He can be funny. He can be serious, and he looks great in the ring. So I suffice it to say, I would like it to see him in AEW. But anyways,
Sign me up for one of those Kill Steam kill shirts. And I did look up, and he is 40 years old. I thought he's probably still in his late 30s. So you win the pony today. He's 40. And this is as a 40-year-old, he's probably a guy. His next deal, 3, 4, 5 years, is probably his last big deal.
yeah.
His last chance to make big money. So it's going to be a key one in that respect too. Well, we've talked a lot here, covered a lot here today. We'll look forward to Ray's coverage of Grand Slam next week, and of course, the pay-per-views coming up in the next few weeks as well. Ray, as always, thank you for your time and your insight.
Thank you so much, Chris.